Hello YouTube. I'm here at the entrance to 40 Acre Rock Heritage Preserve. It's in Lancaster County, east of Lancaster County. If you go down Highway 601 and then take just past the 601-903 intersection, it's going to be up Nature Preserve Road and then take a left on Conservancy Road. But I'm here at the upper parking lot, and this is the entrance. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk down. There's a whole lot to see here. I could do hours and hours just to talk to you, but what I want to do is cut this in a digestible form, so we'll make it about a 20-minute or so video, but talk to you a little bit about the rock and what we've got here, and then I'll do about 3 or 4 follow-up videos of different things there are to see here, and maybe at different times of the year. So we'll do this to start off with and see how it goes, and then we'll talk about some of the specific things here that are really, really neat and what makes this such a special place in South Carolina and in Lancaster County. Now I've walked about a quarter of a mile down the dirt road, and here I am at the rock itself. What it is it's called 40 Acre Rock, but it's really about 14 acres. And first I'll tell you a little bit of something about the geology of the area. John Gent covered this pretty good in his Facebook page. But what happened was the African continental plates and the American continental plates came together and created a bulge. And what happened was that underneath that bulge or whatever, there was all this magma that solidified underneath the ground. And when it pulled away, what it pulled away, and then we have the coastal plain down here and the Piedmont Plateau up here, and here is this line between the two. And right now we're on that line, and you can see out in the distance, it goes for long, long ways. So what we are is we're at the edge of the Piedmont and the coastal plain. We're looking down on the coastal plain, and here we are on the edge of that. And this is called the fall line. It's called the fall line because this is where the rivers fell, and therefore you could produce power. A lot of industry developed along this area, and this is why all the cotton mills and that sort of thing developed along the fall line. But here we are, and this rock is so special. This is granite. You can see that it has a combination of mica, felspar, hornblende, and some quartz, but you can see this in here. And what happens is there's another area, a geologic area in here called a diabase dike, and the diabase dike is down off of the old 601, but it's a real neat geologic formation that we can maybe go there in the wintertime or such. But what happens is, and this is what's interesting about this, here's this rock, and the rock is fairly stable, but in each one of these little pools, you have what's beginning of a small little dip. That small little dip may gather some soil or whatever, but as the soil is there, it'll decay, and what it does is it ends up chemically rotting away the rock itself, and it's what we call chemical weathering. So the chemical weathering takes place, and it begins to eat out these depressions. And we call these solution depressions. Some people call them vernal pools, because in the springtime, this is filled with water. Vernal meaning springtime, it's just filled with water. But what happens is that solution depression ends up decaying away more and more and more rock, and therefore you accumulate more and more soil. The more soil there is, there's a change in the plant material that's there. When it first starts out, there are only plants like what's called a sedum. We call it Puck's orpine is one name for it. But what happens is the sedum develops in there, and the sedum has the ability of storing water in its leaves. And I'll get that at another time of the year because they've shriveled up and died right now. But it stores water in its leaves, reproduces, produces seeds, and then those seeds can grow the next year, so it reproduces and keeps its population going. We also have what we call quillworts, or in this case it's called isoetes, that lives in this. And what happens is that it'll also support some of these mosses. And the mosses we typically think about in real wet areas. And this is a wet area in that the water can't go anywhere beneath this rock, so it stays there. But then when it starts to dry out, it's going to be 90 degrees today. This rock will be a good bit hotter than that. But when it starts to dry out, then these go dormant. As soon as we get another rain, they'll pop back out and be able to store some water and such. So it's an interesting place. But it does support some plant life and animal life that can tolerate this sort of environment. Some of the animals that we'll see out here, some grasshoppers and such that may take advantage of this. It is a place that snakes may inhabit because they can have certain, the reptiles have certain ways of storing water in that their excretion is not going to be urea, it's actually uric acid, and the uric acid removes the water from it so they can retain the water within. They have scaly skin. It doesn't sweat and breathe like my skin does. But lizards will be around here. We have a lot of swifts, fence lizards is what a lot of people call them, American anoles. Snakes we'll have around here. There are some poisonous snakes, but there also, I've seen a picture of one of the largest hognose snakes that I've ever seen out here. Black snakes would be out here too. But the rock itself is just a really neat area. But these solution depressions really make it what it is. It does slope off. There's a human element of this. There's a quarry over here on the other side. And as it slopes off, what happens is whatever decays from here is deposited down below. So we have some interesting sort of plants down there that are actually more mountainous sort of plants. We have trillium and some things like that that are growing along the edge of the rock down at the bottom. So what I'm going to do right now is we'll walk over to one of the bigger solution depressions where the rarest plant in South Carolina is actually located. It may not be there today because it's dry. We call it pool Sprite, so the pool needs to be full of water and such. So we'll see how that goes. But this is the place where most of the pool Sprite is. And like I said, it's dry right now. There's no water in these pools. But it's over here and over here. And pool Sprite, its technical name is Amphianthus pusillus. But it floats in these pools, and what it'll do is it'll float in the pools, and it'll have reproductive structures underneath, but the leaves float on top. And this is the only place that it's found is in these types of environments. And there's several reasons for that. One reason is that it can compete because it's the only one that can handle that. It does fine in the wet sort of environment where it's actually underwater, but then it reproduces quick enough to where the reproduction will be to where it produces seeds, and then those seeds will germinate through the winter, and then it'll grow out the next year. But this is one of the places that it's located. This is actually just right around the corner from where I shot the other shot. But it's not here right now, or it is here, but it's here in the form of seeds and such. But again, you'll see the mosses here. As we get more and more soil, you can see it changes. Here's an elm tree, cedar trees in the back. And each one kind of tries to take advantage of the soil that's there. As we get the woody plants will help hold more soil and also help break the rock apart also. So kind of a neat sort of thing that's going on here. If you can see this, you can see how the leaves are inflated. Those are leaves that are storing water. So these plants are specifically adapted to live in this environment, so they'll store water as long as they can. Every rain that comes, they'll re-inflate those leaves and then store the water for the next time. Their skin also is such that it's got a waxy cuticle layer that doesn't allow water to be lost. So it's adapted to this specific environment, which is a really tough environment. One of the things that does help with chemical weathering is going to be the lichen that grows here. Here's a lichen that's growing. It can grow straight on the bare rock. So it grows, it helps decompose the rock, and as it sits there, it also helps accumulate some little gravel, and then before you know it, you'll have moss growing, and then you'll have other plants that'll start to grow as the soil gets thicker. I'm gonna walk over here and you can see how this is one little pocket where here's the lichen that's eating it up, and now you've got the moss here and the remnants of what was sedum during the wet season. And now it's going to help recycle and collect some other gravel. And if any of y'all have heard of St. John's wort, as far as the medicinal sort of plant, This is St. John's wort. This is a particular variety. I'm not sure of its medicinal qualities, but this is one of the varieties of St. John's wort that grows out here. And you'll see it, and it'll dry up to nothing at the end of the summertime. But this is it, taking advantage of this wet weather, at least as wet as it is before it gets super, super hot. And this is just to show you that even though it seems like everything is dry in this particular on the rock itself, here's some water that's seeping out underneath this whole big area over here. You can see how much soil there is there. That soil collects that water, and then it can seep out over here. And you'll notice over here, even at the base of these cedar trees, there's some ferns growing. And those ferns growing, there's also woolly ragwort, is that big leaf plant that's growing there. But if you look at this, you wouldn't know that it's in such a dry area as the top of this rock. You do notice, though, that all the cedar trees are definitely bonsai'd, and this is nature bonsaiing these. The weather can get pretty extreme up here because of its openness, but also these are very stressed out for want of water. Once it really does get dry, they don't have the mechanisms that some of the others do to survive, and in a super drought sort of situation, they might not make it, and some have not made it. They've been here for a long time and then ended up dying out. But a stressful area, but really, really neat area. This is an area that's pretty interesting. This is where they quarried this rock to use as construction materials. And when they quarried it, they would actually drill in, and you could see the drill holes where they drilled in to then take off big blocks of the rock. This was probably done with a hand drill and a sledgehammer, which is incredible work to do something like this. And then one way to do this was actually put wood in it, dry wood in it, add water, and it would expand, and as it expanded along this seam, it would pop the rock off. So that's one way that they could do this. I don't see any examples of a hole deep enough to dynamite or anything like that around here. But it's interesting, this has a human history as well as a natural history. And that's one thing I'd like for people to remember, is that humans are part of natural history. So, appreciate what we have here, enjoy it, and take care of it. Now we're down at the bottom of the rock. This is where it slopes off to the area below. Down below this, there's a stream coming from the left side and then another one coming from the right side. And they'll meet down below and then come together, and there's a huge beaver pond down there. One of the the best example I can think of a beaver dam that you can find with easy access to. The easiest way to get to there is actually enter from a lower entrance right off of Nature Conservancy Road, and then you can walk straight into the beaver pond. There's a path that goes to the left down there. The path to the right will come on up to this particular area. There's a waterfall. The waterfall is, if you were coming down the path that I came down, the waterfall is to the left, and the path enters just right off the rock itself. Be careful when you walk around here. Be careful about getting lost. Be careful about being out here after dark. The place is limited. You're not supposed to be here after dark or before. One of the best times to get here, actually, though, is going to be right before the sun comes up. Start out, and then as the sun comes up, this is a great place to be. There have been people who have been lost in here, so you don't want to get lost. Bring plenty of water. Do the common sense sort of things you would do whenever you go on a hike anywhere. One thing I would caution you to do, there's been a lot of damage and destruction to the rock itself, and people who have come out here and done things that they shouldn't do, and they know they shouldn't do it. But as you come, bring a little bag with you and take up some trash as you go out. Definitely don't leave any as you're here, and help make this place a better place than it is, and try to preserve it for those who want to come after you. So appreciate your joining me on this little trip to 40 Acre Rock, and I hope you can come out and enjoy it yourself. It's a place worth coming to, and it's not that far away, but y'all have a good day and get outside some.